Two Ukrainian women in those interviews standing on opposite sides of their country's border. It is the new reality, 14 days old now, for millions of people forced to choose between the unthinkable, right? Leaving their home, leaving their homeland with their babies, leaving their husbands behind, their fathers, or staying behind in what has quickly become what Ukraine is now calling an unprovoked, unjustified war targeting civilians. They've been describing it as hell on earth. Joining us now, Alexandra Ustinova, a member of the Ukrainian parliament. She has publicly expressed her concerns on the humanitarian crisis back home and her demands for more from the U.S., more protection from the U.S. and NATO. Tell us what you're hearing about what is happening, and if you could sort of take us from east to west and tell us what's happening in Ukraine today.
I'm from Kiev City, and to be honest, half of my friends who are girls had already left with their babies, with their children. So people who used to, I don't know, run big offices in my country are now sleeping with their babies on somewhere at the railway stations in Poland or in Lviv on the floor, just waiting for hours in lines just to cross the border to escape the shelling and bombing and just to save their kids is something I cannot still believe is happening in the country. Some of them stay and just send their kids abroad with their parents, with their grandparents, but they're staying there with their husbands just to protect the city. It's crazy. And all these people keep dreaming about is that they will not be refugees to the rest of their lives and they would have a place to come back. And that's what Ukrainians are fighting for. Because if we don't have a country to come back to, if Kiev is going to become the second Aleppo, and that's what is going on right now in Mariupol city, which is in the east of the country, which was bombed, and probably everybody saw how the maternity hospitals are being bombed, how the orphanages are being bombed or shelled. This is something that couldn't be something we couldn't imagine 2 weeks ago, to be honest. But this is the reality for us now. And that's why we keep begging for the international community, for the defense, for the air defense that we need, because we can fight on the ground. We can kick Putin out and his army from our country, but we cannot do anything with the sky. And that's where the missiles and the bombs are coming from. And they're exactly targeting the civilian population because his strategy is to kill as many civilians as he can, so he puts us at the table for negotiations, which are not negotiations, but basically blackmailing us that I'm going to have more children die, more women die, unless you sign what I want you to sign.
We covered the sort of slow move toward Kyiv from the suburbs where civilians have been targeted and killed. I wonder if you can just talk to me about what you're expecting in the coming. Our military assesses that it'll take 1 to 2 weeks for Russian forces to encircle Kyiv, and then another several weeks of fighting. Can you tell me how you're preparing for that?
So to be honest, our army is prepared on the ground. So thanks God, yesterday we had 1,000 people evacuated from the suburbs of Kiev because, to be honest, what Putin has been doing so far and his army officers is using civilians as the human shield for his army. So basically, people would spend weeks already in the basements, totally surrounded by the Russian army, and they would not let us evacuate children or women because because in this case they know we won't be able to shoot their army because they're using people as the human shield. So yesterday we evacuated about 1,000 people from the suburbs of Kiev, so it would be a little bit easier for us. But I keep telling everybody in the United States and in EU that we can protect ourselves on the ground. We have our armed support, we have ammunition, we're getting it from our partners, but we need, unfortunately, to control the sky. So far, the biggest damage, especially for the civilian population, including Kiev, has been done by missiles coming from the Russian or Belarusian border, missiles coming from Chernobyl, because what happened previously is their army occupied Chernobyl, which is one of the biggest nuclear stations in Europe, and they surrounded it with their vehicles that shoot missiles towards Kiev, which is 50 miles from Kiev. So we cannot shoot back this air defense with our air defense system because the nuclear factory will go on fire. That was a smart move. That's why we need the air defense system to shoot the missiles down. And that's why we keep talking to our international partners that we need at least a no-fly zone over the biggest cities so the civilian population cannot be hit. Because we cannot literally shoot back. So we need the air defense system to put the missiles down. We need the air defense system to put the air jets down because they know they're bombing the civilian population. 4 hours before the maternity hospital in Mariupol was bombed, they came out with a statement that this is not a maternity hospital. This is a hospital where the soldiers are. And that's how they explain the Russian people why they've been bombing the maternity hospitals with children, with babies, with pregnant women there. And unfortunately, it's going to continue. And I keep telling the United States, NATO, the European countries, that this is just how much time it takes and how many lives it takes until he shoots one of the nuclear stations or thousands of people had already died. But we will have tens or hundreds of thousands of people dead, shelled to death before we would need to close the sky from their missiles and their air jets.
In this country, our president has made clear that that is something he views as a provocation that could lead to World War III. What do you say to that?
I'm telling you that Putin does not need a provocation. If Putin wants to go into the war, he will. He's done that in 2008 in Georgia. He's done it in Syria. He's done it in Ukraine in 2014 and now, because nobody expected that things like that, and this is a genocide and an execution of the whole nation, like that we are watching 24/7 right now, would happen in the center of Europe in the 21st century. He's a psychopath. If he wants to go into war with NATO, U.S., or I don't know, any other country, he will do that. So we have to be tough on him. Second, we're not asking any NATO member of the United States to fight on the ground. We can do it on our own, and we had already proved that. All we're asking to do is to have the air defense system controlling the sky, so these bombs and these shells are not coming and shoot our children, shoot our babies, shoot our women. This is the thing we keep asking. And one more thing for you to understand, this is just a matter of time. He is not gonna stop unless the world stops him. And the further he goes, the more difficult it is and the more lives it has. Because if he wants to start the World War III and become a part of history like Hitler did, well, maybe the world should react upfront and stop this guy. Because otherwise, this is going to be a disaster. Because so far we have 90 countries in the world, the biggest and the most powerful countries, the United States, NATO, who said that they're aligned with Ukraine, that they're supportive of Ukraine, that cannot stop one single psycho sitting there, not even in Kremlin, because as long as I know he's not in Kremlin, he's hiding somewhere in a bunker, who is threatening the world to start a war. If he wants to start it, he will start it. But we have to be first to put him down.
Alexandra Ustinova, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Please stay safe.